Well, first of all, communication's awesome. So,
Okay.
I would err on the side of more communication is better than less communication. Like we have some buyers that will call us multiple times a day with questions, and I'm happy to take those phone calls every single time. It's just because if we're in constant communication, everything is going to go smoothly and the deal's going to get closed. And it just helps the entire process whenever we can communicate our needs, when you're communicating your needs, when we're in touch with the title company. So I would say that everything relies on good communication between all the entities, the lender, the buyer, and the title company.
Welcome to another episode of Fund Flip Repeat. I am your private money lender, Joel Cadlick, and today I'm joined by Wesley Rowe, the loan wizard behind Fixed Lending, who brings over 10 years of experience not only processing loans, but also working deep inside title companies. If you've ever had a deal delayed, a lien pop up last minute, or just wondering how the money actually moves, you're going to want to tune into this one. So super excited to have you on this episode, Wesley. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. So you're the man behind the scenes. So the Wizard of Oz, as you would say. So that's why I gave you that intro. And man, just like we like to have on this podcast, being able to provide a ton of value to the listeners. So I'm going to have some questions here for you, and let's just dive right into it. So what skills or qualities have been most critical to your success in loan processing and working with title companies?
Well, I mean, there's several things. I mean, I always go back to like the first most important skill, and I think the first skill is people and communication. Just knowing how to communicate with people, how to interact with people. I think that being a people person and knowing ultimately what they want is the most important skill. Beyond that, being able to speak the language of the title company, know the process, coming over to the lender side, knowing what we need and how a title company operates. Those are it's like the process. So when the title company might be slow rolling you on something, or they might be saying that they're having a difficulty with something, exactly what that entails, and being able to have that insight and being able to shift and adjust, and even being able to step in and communicate what's going on to our borrowers is a really valuable insight to have.
Yeah. And when you say like slow rolling, or, there's some challenges or hurdles, like how do you prioritize tasks when managing like multiple files under like tight deadlines? Because speed is super important, right? So you hit communication, I agree. So communication and speed is super important for what we do. So managing multiple files under tight deadlines, how do you prioritize that?
I think that, just knowing how long certain things take, right? We know abstracting is going to take a week or two, and we have to have the abstract in order for the title work to come in. The attorneys are going to need 2 or 3 days once the abstract comes in order to be able to figure out if there's any issues with the property. Then you need a survey, and the survey is about a week after the title work comes in, because the surveyor needs to see the title work also in order to be able to make sure that their survey matches up with what the title company and the attorney is seeing on the title work.
Gotcha. So survey is a big one, right?
Survey is a big one.
I definitely want to make sure to have that. Do you recommend that folks get a survey every time, or what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you need to know what you're buying. Like we've seen deals come across our desk when I was in the title industry where, people have had, like we had one where they had a utility easement running directly under the property, right? Like you don't want somebody who's coming in to flip a property to go buy that house thinking that they're going to turn around and sell it easy, when a house like that may only be available to a cash buyer. So that's a big deal. If you're looking at purchasing a property and renovating it with the intention to sell, that could bust your whole deal. And we've seen other issues that are similar. You never know when there's a utility easement, or we've had properties where the ideal spot to build the house actually ends up being partway on a road easement. So yes, I mean, if you're going to be spending that much of your time and your equity to purchase a house and flip it with the intention of profiting, you want to make sure you're spending the $200-300 to get a survey to make sure that you're building everything in the right spot.
So that's what you see it costing, about $200-300.
Yeah, I would say on average, I think it's about $250, give or take, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
And that survey is what you're saying, just to clarify, that is going to help identify those issues that could cause major issues. And when you say, I want to unpack this too, when you say, well, if there is that utility easement that only a cash buyer now would be able to buy, meaning hindering your ability to exit the way you want to, selling it on the MLS or on the market, you're saying like that's not going to get approved for traditional financing. Like you would want to
Right.
traditionally fix and flip that home. You're going to sell it to a cash buyer, which probably means you're going to sell that home at a discount to another
Sure.
investor if you need to get out of it. Is that right?
Sure. Sure. It would also limit your pool of available buyers. So, and I mean, who wants to, like who wants to have a sewer easement running right directly through the middle of their house?
Yeah.
So, in the same thing with utility easements, or, if there's the big thing we kind of look for on the survey from the title perspective is going to be, is there like a concrete slab? That's the most common one that I see. It's somebody built a shed on concrete and they put that concrete slab over the top of utility easement, and work needs to be done. It could potentially lead to the utility company having to bust the concrete in order to be able to get to their utility line. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's a owner cost.
That sounds really expensive.
Yeah, it could be.
It sounds a lot more expensive
Yeah,
than a $200
yeah,
survey. So it sounds like it's a
yeah.
no-brainer just to
Just get
get
a
the
survey.
survey for peace of mind. So
Hmm.
a good night's
Yeah.
sleep is worth its weight in gold. Excellent. Okay, so that's a big one, right? So that's huge. So what are some other red flags that could cause a deal to stall or die? Like whether it be in that type of process or in like processing in general.
Yeah, I would say that, we worked together before I came to the team.
Mhm.
And I would say one of the big ones that we saw would be unreleased mortgages or improperly released mortgages.
Mhm.
Is notorious for that. And I believe they're now the second largest holder of mortgages in the United States. And so they're going to, when they release mortgages, they're doing it at a national level. And every state has different requirements for what a release of mortgage needs to look like and what kind of documentation needs to be available. And a company that big, I was on the phone with them one time and they told me they had 90 days to respond and review the request that I submitted. And so that's not even necessarily fixing the issue. That's just having an attorney on their team look at the issue and see if it's even something that they need to address. So, if you've got a seller who's motivated, they need to sell immediately because of hardship, and then you turn around and tell them, hey, this isn't going to be resolved for 90 days. Like it's kind of a big deal. So stuff like that delays deals. I would say probates are another one. Probate is usually a 60 to 90 day process. So there could be all kinds of things that you could potentially deal with on a title commitment that need to be cleaned up.
How can you be like proactive about that or like catch that ahead of time so you can like properly, like for an investor, right? So like going into that, being able to communicate that, like, so probate, right? That's an event. If someone like passed away or died, that's going to have to go through the legal process of clearing that up. And then eventually the judge is going to sign off saying, yes, this house can now be sold. With the scenario, that is like an also very frustrating situation because there's some factors outside of control and you're kind of reliant on this bigger, larger, big box company that you're describing, right? Just being able to sign off on a document that you need, right? The probate, I understand that's more of a sensitive thing and needs to happen legally. The thing is more of like, hey, we need to get this thing signed. Is there anything that can be done proactively outside of that, or just like proper communication to the sellers on like, hey, this is what's happening?
I mean, with the probate, you should probably know that ahead of time. Like if you're buying from an estate or you're getting the contract, obviously there has to be a personal representative, right? The person who's passed
Yeah.
isn't going to sign the contract. So that one's pretty easy. You can kind of know, hey, if they haven't started this probate process, we're looking at least 90 days before this is going to close. Unfortunately, with other title issues like a mortgage that was unreleased or any mortgage that was unreleased for that matter, you don't know that until an attorney reviews the abstract and puts it in the title commitment. So, that is unfortunately, there's not really a lot you can do ahead of time for some of those issues.
Okay. So that's where like building rapport ahead of time and then just having that communication is also so critical because like one, time kills all deals. So you want to make sure that you can move quickly, but also being able to understand and communicate with your title company and your lending team of knowing what's happening. So you're in the know. So one thing that you don't want to do is just go ahead and deliver a contract to title and deliver it to your lender, your private money person like us, for as an example, and then just be passive about it. You still want to be active. So you want to be all over that. So yeah, I think
Sure.
that's really, really good advice.
And I will say, I will say, yes, for one, speed is of the essence, right? Like if you're in a hurry, you want to get that contract to your title company as soon as possible because they're going to go through. Most title companies are so big that they have like a setup process, and that setup process usually takes about 48 hours before the contract is reviewed and things start getting ordered. And so you need to think that most deals are probably going to need at least 30 days. And I certainly don't want to be negative about the title process, right?
Sure.
Most title issues can be resolved within the 30 days on the contract. Some may take like a week or two. In fact, most title issues usually get resolved pretty quickly. It's just every now and then you may see one. And the other thing is, a lot of times people have an owner's policy, and that allows the title company to close even if there are issues that exist from a previous owner. A lot of times those can be cleared up with an owner's policy and things can move along like normal.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. No, and I would agree, right? But it is those instances where those red flags can happen that you got to be prepared for, because those will happen if you're doing enough volume or seeing enough transactions in the deals. Yep.
And obviously, the more experience you get, somebody who's buying houses and flipping houses, the more you're going to be aware of those issues and how long they take. You'll get a feel for the time.
Yeah. And a lot of time you're, as a good real estate investor, you're a problem solver, right? So you're in the pain, you're in the problems, and those are tied to some of the most problematic transactions out there as well. So you might be exposed to more of that at a higher ratio than normal real estate, just because that's the world you're living in.
Sure.
And having someone excellent on your team to know how to navigate that is super, super important. So.
Yeah. And usually if you're somebody who's, getting a good deal on a house, there's a reason. There's probably, some issues that exist, but that you can have confidence that if you have a good title company, that you should be able to close it in a decent amount of time.
Awesome. So for new investors, what advice would you give to make their closing smoother?
Good communication with your title company, getting them the contract as soon as possible, and then definitely trying to make sure you're not doing really short contracts. You have to be realistic, right? Like I say that 30 days is a fast turnaround in Oklahoma, especially in Oklahoma. Now, if you're in another state, that may be different. Oklahoma is one of only 2 abstracting states in the entire nation. So an abstract is basically the history of the house. And in Oklahoma, that goes back to when it was owned by somebody who was Native American, and then they sold it to somebody else, right? That first deed, that's going to be the very beginning of the abstract. And everything that has happened that it relates to that house, whether it be a divorce, a mortgage, a release, a lien, anything that could affect the title of that house is going to be in this book, right? And what happens is whenever you go into contract, that book has to be updated. Now we live in a time where records are digital. So a licensed abstractor will go into the clerk's office and they'll search the records and the court clerk as well. And they'll make sure that anything that could affect the chain of title on your property is going to be in that abstract. And that process takes the quickest it can be done is usually 4 to 5 days. And then it has to go to the title company, and one of their attorneys is actually going to go through that abstract and they're going to read it, and they're going to basically take notes, and they're going to write a report based on everything that's happened to that property since the last time it was sold. So that's another 48 hours, and then a survey, usually 5 to 7 days, and then you need to give the title company usually about a week to clean everything up. So that's why I say 30 days, right? If you want to set yourself up for failure, try to turn a 15-day contract into your title company and see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, and that's for title, right? So setting those healthy expectations. Sure. Now for the lending side, for us, it's like, hey, we can close as soon as title is clear, as fast as like our investors get us the information. So we can close it 7 days, no problem, right? But that we're already entering into the expectation that like, hey, this stuff that Wesley's talking about, the abstracting and the survey stuff's already like well along the way. But that's so true. So that abstracting period, that needing to be updated, it's good to have those healthy timelines in there, because you don't want to put something in there and then have to backtrack, because those things absolutely have to happen. You have to get that updated abstract in Oklahoma. Now, if you're in a state of like Texas and stuff, that's going to look a little differently. So you can escalate those contracts and close a lot quicker. But that's really good.
Yeah. You got to set us up for success as well. We're a team.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the team aspect of it, like how should investors communicate during the loan process? Like what's too much? What's too little? What's like the most ideal?
Well, first of all, communication's awesome. So
Okay.
I would err on the side of more communication is better than less communication. Like we have some buyers that will call us multiple times a day with questions. And I'm happy to take those phone calls every single time. It's just because if we're in constant communication, everything is going to go smoothly and the deal's going to get closed. And it just helps the entire process whenever we can communicate our needs, when you're communicating your needs, when we're in touch with the title company. So I would say that everything relies on good communication between all the entities, the lender, the buyer, and the title company.
Love it. So you can't under communicate. So
In my
don't feel
opinion, yeah.
bad. Don't feel bad
Yeah.
about reaching out to us.
Though I reserve the right to change that opinion should
Little
somebody
disclosure there.
really
Yeah, I
blow me
love it.
up. Yeah. Maybe not once an hour would be good.
What's the weirdest or most challenging file you've ever processed? Give us something
It's a
good.
really good question.
Yeah.
Probably one of yours.
Probably, no doubt.
I would say, like I hate to be the person hating on, and I hope I don't get you in trouble for this, but I would say probably them. We had
We'll just remove
somebody.
them. We'll just say a company.
Let's say one of the biggest issues I've ever had was a certain lender who they had a very long review process. It was a 90-day review process. And it was ideally it was going to be a quick turnaround, maybe like a 30-day closing. And we found this mortgage that was not properly released. And so we had to go, so I basically spent, not definitely, it was probably about 120 days. I mean, I remember thinking, wow, I've worked like a third of a year on this file trying to get it closed. And it ultimately came down to the fact that they just weren't reviewing the file. And I called them so much that I basically figured out their entire system. So I would talk to them and I'd have to get past the first customer service representative and then get on to somebody at a higher level. Well, eventually they got tired of me calling and they just gave me the direct number for that escalation department. And so I started calling them, and I would call them every couple of days to try to figure out what's going on. And I eventually called them so much that they disabled that phone number.
Wow.
I had to start calling the regular customer service line again. Yeah, it was pretty wild. But I got so frustrated. And part of being on the title side of things is you kind of become like a detective. Like you have to kind of dig into things and learn how processes work for some of these companies.
That's good.
So one of the things that you realize is that whenever a company has a domain and they have email addresses, they all have the same format for an email address, right? So if it's John Doe at bank.com, well, the CEO has the exact same format email address as the lowliest customer service representative. So for that particular file, I ended up going on their website and looking up, they had their entire executive staff on the website. So I just put all of their email addresses based on how they format their email addresses into an email with about 30 people. I also copied every vice president that had signed a release of mortgage improperly over the last 2 years that I could find on the county clerk's website. And I spent an hour composing this scathing email about their company and how unacceptable it was and how I'd been dealing with this process for 90 days and this woman couldn't sell her house because of their incompetence. I fired that email off, and not every email worked, but it did for the CEO. And so about 2 days later, I got a phone call from somebody in their company, and it was like a customer service executive.
Wow.
We were able to get the issue resolved a couple weeks after that. So.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you sharing that because that's a good experience share of kind of behind the scenes of what it is to actually be that detective. And you also have to be very persistent, right? And a detective just can't give up when they hit a hurdle or you got to keep looking for the different clues and you got to get really, really resourceful. And I think that's what it speaks volumes to, like the type of person you are and how you approach it. So obviously this is a little self-serving, but like you're on our teams. This is the type of, you're dealing with Wesley if you're working with fixed lending, and that's just, why wouldn't you do that? So, because you're just
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I
I'll do
and I
whatever
mean
it
that. So
takes.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
you absolutely do. So how do you handle it when like things go sideways with a deal, like a particular,
Well, I guess it depends on situation, right? Like, give me an example of sideways.
like a file's gonna bust for whatever reason.
Well, usually, we're here to represent, the person that's coming to us to partner to purchase a property, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so that's the priority. Hey, like, we're on the same team, right? Like, we're not adversarial. We want to set you up for success, right? So everything
Yeah.
that we do is always with that in mind. Like, whenever we're asking somebody for documents or something, that's the reason, right? So if a file is going to bust, I mean, we want to communicate and find out, well, what's the problem. Is it something that we can step in and help? Is there something that, is there anything that we can do in order to make that process smoother? But I mean, ultimately,
Yeah,
like, you
love it.
say it all the time, and it really stuck with me, like, sometimes the best deal you do is the one that you don't. And
Mm,
so, that
that's so
does
true.
happen. So, like, I mean, it's all about communication, and we're more than willing to do as much or as little communicating to other parties as possible. If you want us to let the title company know, we'll do it. If you would rather have that conversation with them, that's fine. But everything we do is with that in mind, protecting what you want for the deal and protecting our partnership. Like, we're on the same team.
I love that, man. That's so good. Can you explain the timeline from submission to closing, like from your perspective? Like, what does you get a file in, we get it closed? What are the steps look like for like an
From the
investor
lender side or from the title side?
from your perspective? But that would be helpful for an investor to know, like, hey, this is what it would look like
Okay.
working with you.
Yeah. So, well, from the title side, you submit your contract and it goes through their setup people, and they set up a file electronically through whatever software system that they're using. And at that point, things get ordered. The abstract gets ordered, the survey gets ordered, the title gets ordered from the attorney so that it gets on their page. And everything gets set up. Abstract again takes 5 days, sometimes 2 weeks. I mean, like, obviously the summer when there's a higher volume, things are going to take a little longer. The attorney reads it,
Unless
takes
you're in
about two or
Texas,
three
no
days for the attorney
abstract.
to read it. Right. Sorry. Yes, for Oklahoma. And then, yeah, and then when the title work comes back, that's when it goes out, and we see it. The borrower sees it. Everybody that's involved in the contract is going to see the title work, and at that point, they should know if there's any issues. If there's no issues, the next thing that needs to happen is it goes to the surveyor right then, and then they make sure that their survey shows any easements or like utility, like a sewer easement running underneath the house, for instance. And then once the survey comes back, that's usually the last item before we can actually close. Then from our side, we're making sure that as soon as your file comes over, there's certain things we need. We need LLC docs, we need the contract, we need your scope of work, so we know what you're doing. We need an inspection. So we have to collect all these documents, the LLC documents, the driver's license, to make sure that you're going in title correctly. That's a big deal. And then those are like the initial things that we can get immediately up front. And then the next thing we're working on is like, are we, we got to get this property insured. We got to make sure that the mortgagees are listed on your insurance. So we can start working on that process. We'll send you our insurance requirements. And then that's usually something that's one of the final steps from the borrower's perspective, that's one of the last things that happens right before closing. And then we require that the insurance is paid for at least 6 months ahead of time. And then once we have the proof of insurance and the paid receipt, we're good to fund. Let's close.
Yeah. So really, it's not much. I mean, at least from on our side, a lot of it's not like title, and they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. And when you say inspection too, it's not even a formal inspection. So we don't require a formal inspection. We don't require a formal appraisal, and there's no charge or cost to that unless we have to send somebody out with boots on the ground. So yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So what happens after a deal closes? So let's say we've got through all that, we funded the deal, now the deal closes. Like, what are expectations there? Like, we don't have to get like super granular with it, but like, what does that
Sure.
kind of look like after a deal closes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, once it's closed, get to work, start putting in that work. And then, so we have, our draw request systems. We do not put the money up front for repairs, but we are absolutely going to reimburse you for the repairs according to your scope of work once the work is completed. We have a minimum draw request of, $5,000, but, we also get that draw request out. Our goal is within 48 hours, and at the very least 72 hours. We're trying to get your money to you as quickly as possible. Many companies, they'll have maybe a 30-day draw request, or they got to send an inspector out to the property and you have to schedule it and they'll charge you for it. But we want to make the draw process as easy as possible. And we're not here to be your adversary. We're here to partner with you and to help you. So, if you have questions, we're going to help guide you along that process. And then once the remodel is complete and you've issued your final draw request and you list the property, the next thing it goes to title, then they'll reach out to us. Same process, except you're now on the seller side. It all goes through that same process. And when the title work comes up, they'll see that we have a mortgage on the property. They may ask you for our contact information, but they'll send us a payoff request, and we'll send them one. And when it closes, we close.
Awesome.
Congrats.
Let's ring the bell.
Yeah.
Make the money.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Let's do another deal.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think it's so important to make sure that we're like lightning quick on the draws, and, we're not charging draw fees either. We want to make that super painless. And, Wesley does an amazing job to make that a priority. You're all over that. And you obviously, if you work with us, you experience that. If you decide to work with us, you will experience that. So we believe in it so much. I'm going to tease this, hopefully I don't get in trouble, but we're going to come out with like a draw guarantee stating that like we're going to absolutely get it out like lightning quick, or, there's going to be penalties that we're going to pay you or something like that. So that's upcoming here soon, just because that's how strongly we do believe in the draw process. So that's awesome, man. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. Cool. All right. So we did this on the last episode because it was with another one of our fantastic people on the team, Olivia, and we've got you now too, Wesley. So we're going to do a rapid fire round. So buckle up. It'll be fun. All right. So just try to answer as quickly as possible. Ready?
Okay.
Put you in the hot seat. Here we go. Most frustrating part of your job?
Man, I love my job.
It's
boring stuff it's boring stuff that nobody needs to know about.
The mundane. Favorite part of working in lending?
Stuff. Interacting with people and especially first time borrowers. Man, it's just so cool to see people pursuing their dreams.
One thing you wish every investor knew?
Get a serve.
You're very passionate about that. Title myth you want to bust? It's
kind of similar to lending, man. Like, the title company is also on your side. So they're not trying to be difficult. They want you to close just as much as you want to.
Love it. That's a great answer. Okay. Hey, for someone who wants to close faster, smoother, and more often, what's one thing they should start doing today?
Make sure that when you're sending your contract over to your title company, you're sending it as soon as you have it. Man, there's nothing worse than getting a contract on the title company and they're like, hey, we got to close in 15 days, but you look and you see that the contract was signed 10 days ago, right? Like, it happens more often than you think. So it really is just like being on top of things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Any final thoughts, Wesley?
I can't think of anything.
I'll just say this. If you got any value from this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Send it to another investor who's trying to close faster, scale smarter. And remember, smooth closings don't happen by accident. They happen when you've got the right team in place. So big thanks to Wesley for pulling back the curtain on what really happens behind the scenes at Fixed Lending. We're not just funding deals, we're helping you build momentum. And that starts with trust, speed, and clear communication. You don't need a bank, you need a blueprint. Let's fund your next deal together. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.